Well, here I am. A little bit delayed. It's been a bit of a tough week at work. Several people either sick or on vacation, so I had to fill in for that. So it set me back a bit. With all that aside, though, staring across the front line with this visual perspective, things are mostly slowing down, at least for now. Maybe that's because of the blizzard, lack of the mud, whatever it is. It's helping me out a lot. My forces do need at least several weeks to get to strength for whatever I'm able to push to bear for the winter offensive that I hope to have. But before we get to my actions, the only combat along this front line is southeast of Veroneza. Two divisions are pushed back. It's very minor. I'll show it in a little bit, but for now, it's just a matter of him pushing forward, basically taking the ground that I willingly gave up last turn. It did pay dividends because this did give me what I needed in order to recuperate some of my offensive abilities. The combat around Krasnodar has continued to intensify, not necessarily in the sense of actual battles. The maneuverability of his units, the lack of my strength to actually slow him down is all playing into a factor. The part that confuses me, obviously, I've said 100 times, is I don't know how he's supplying all this. I don't know how he's built his rail lines going from Stalino to Rostov down this far southeast. But apparently he's going to continue to move forward. So he's surrounded a couple of battalions north of the city itself, and he's moved up along my lines towards the city of Malyhin. So I'm fairly confident that this makes it to where the only play I have in this area is to capture the city of Rostov. If I'm able to do that in my winter offensive, then this cuts these units off. I'm not sure how fast they'll be able to retreat once winter reaches this far south, which it will. And I don't know necessarily whether or not, even if he's able to capture the city of Krasnodar and Maykop, that matters. But only time will tell on that. I haven't gotten this far in any of the games I've ever played, so I'm going to have to wait and see. But I'm going to need some recon in order to get a better picture of what I'm facing and to see what I'm actually able to accomplish on November the 23rd, 1941. But at this point in time, my air plans remain relatively the same as they have for the last several turns. It's mostly like isolated bombings and the recon that I was talking about. I don't really do much further north because the weather is getting worse as we move south, so I'm going to keep that in mind. I'm not looking forward to really run a lot of op losses as winter goes along, so this will start to become less of an issue as the months progress until we get to spring. My first move on the ground is with the Coastal Army Group. It's mostly brigades, but still, it is, like I said last turn, they're here, and they are to stretch out towards Lake Ladoga and finally reestablish a coherent front. Understanding why he never went around my limited lines that I had here, because there's not much to gain. I don't know even how I'm going to supply these brigades. So whatever offensive capabilities come from in this region, I doubt this will be the army to do it. On the complete other opposite ends of my front lines, the southern front has been tasked with retaking the city of Rostov. And as I move forward, it's become quite clear that his forces are still relatively strong. So I might take a bloody nose here when I get my turn back. That's fine with me, because I honestly feel like I need to make him at least think I'm doing something that I'm capable of and react accordingly. And if that slows his offensive on Krasnodar down at all, then this will be worth it, I think. So this has been mostly a quiet turn. And it's, yes, I've taken some ground where my enemies gifted me it along my flanks. But I still need to do something that actually is productive with gunpowder. And to do this with the armies that I have at my disposal along my entire front line, there's only two that I can rely on. And the first one I've mentioned quite a lot, going all the way back to the end of October, where he tried to take and conquer the city of Rezhev. There was the 30th Army standing in his way, and they continued to hold that town for 2 weeks. I then pulled him off the line and brought him back to rest and recuperate. And now they're going to get a new mission. So the mission is simple. We're going to swing the 30th Army southeast, a little bit further down along the lines. We're going to move the 55th Army up to retake the positions southeast, like immediately southeast of Rezhev. And this will free up the 30th to actually engage in a battle where hopefully the results are in my favor. And as it commences, we're looking at about 65,000 men going against 10. And it still isn't quite as happy as I want it to be, but it does cause him to retreat. So I will definitely take that. And my only other combat in the area is coming from the 13th Army with Zhukov himself. I do plan to move him to a front at some point in time, probably taking over the central front, but that's going to be expensive. But either way, I move them into position, lining them up to fight this Panzer division with, I believe, a static infantry is what I'm going up against. It's 30 to 10, 77,000 men to 20,000 men. So I wasn't too sure actually how this was going to play itself out when I first did this. I was pleasantly surprised, even though this does cost me quite a lot of tanks. But I mean, even with Russian equipment, 455 tanks and 1,100 guns going into this, I'm very happy to get these results. The question is what I do with the end result of this, because running into that mechanized division to the south there, I don't really want the 13th Army to take his counterattack. So unfortunately, to do this, with all men involved, the 54th Army, the light green forces in the center of the screen, are going to become sacrificial lambs. I'm going to move them up. I'm going to move the 13th Army back. The hope is that I get some replacements, and then I'm able to make another strike next turn, next week. That's the dream, but not quite sure. I don't know what he's able to do with static forces on the offensive. I'm assuming that within a 1 hex area, it's irrelevant. But I'm new to this whole concept. It's the first time I've ever encountered it, so we'll see. We'll see when I get the turn back. But before we get to that point, this is the image that I was facing when I first started my turn. There's not much change as we look towards the end. Obviously, my flanks have moved forward, formed up along what I could, and then I had those various successes in the center. I'm still waiting, obviously, for, I guess, 500,000 reserves to be unlocked. So I think that's soon. I'm not sure. I think it's the first or second week of December. So that'll help out a lot. I'm restructuring my reserves. I've canceled a lot of rifle divisions that are just sitting there gathering nothing. So I'm trying to streamline to get most of my manpower to go to what I actually am going to use, which is these units that are actually on the map.